Hey everybody, my name is Paul Lesden Jr., aka Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com and, of course, the self-proclaimed biggest Jets fan in the world. And welcome to the Jet Zone, right here on Sports War Radio. If you're listening right now just to the audio feed, we are uploading this audio later to the podcast because I'm at the home studio here. We've been doing this the last couple of weeks as I've worked virtually, from home a couple days a week, and it's been a lot of fun. And there's been great interaction and great questions and comments and everything else here on the show. So we're doing it again, and we'll try to do this more often and all kinds of things of that nature. Wherever you're watching, make sure you please show your support. Give the video a nice thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button. All New York Jets content all the gosh darn time. And in particular, I'll give you a couple of shout outs. First off, every Monday from the end of the Jets season all the way through the NFL draft, we have a mock draft Monday special. You can check it out in the YouTube playlist, The Path to the 2022 NFL Draft. And we will continue to have all kinds of guests. So we've had some wonderful guests on the show thus far, like Connor Hughes of The Athletic, Ethan Greenberg, who works for the Jets. We've had fellow content creators like Green Bean. And most recently, the most recent episode is Russell Brown, a national scout for the Cover One podcast and also for Cover One in general. You can check out that latest episode coming up on Monday. So make sure you guys get ready for all of that jazz. And again, show your support. Also, drop in your questions. We're streaming live simultaneously in 3 different places on my Twitter account for the Jet Zone, the Jets underscore zone, on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/boygreen25, and on Facebook, the Jet Zone. So you guys, wherever you're watching, it's cool that StreamYard does this. Wherever you're watching, you guys ask questions there. We will get those questions here in the chat, and we will bring them up on today's show. I got a bunch of topics I'm going to get into. And, of course, your comments are out. So let's jump in with a couple of people jumping right in. Hello, Matthias. Thank you for jumping in on YouTube. It's Snoopy. Free agency needs to start already. It does, Snoopy, and it will. The new league year kicks off in the second week of March, somewhere in there. I don't have the exact date off the top of my head. But I kind of like that we have all this time because it's speculation. It's who could they spend the money on? What could happen? And, of course, we just wrapped up the next mile marker in the offseason calendar. That is, of course, the Senior Bowl, which the Jets are participating in for the first time in over 40 years. The last time they were there is 1979, and they just participated, obviously, this past weekend. And I think there are a lot of nuggets from there, of course, that we can talk about. But I love all these mile markers. The next one for me, I love the NFL Combine. My friends joke with me, call it the underwear Olympics and things of that nature. But I love the Combine. That's another opportunity. And then, of course, there's free agency right there in March. There's the franchise tag deadline and all these other hoopla dates. And, of course, the NFL draft a month later. So, folks, buckle your seatbelts. We got a lot of fun to have here, not only on the Jet Zone podcast, but everywhere else as well. So while I'd love for it to be here, that's more content. I think there's a lot of speculation to be had between now and then, Snoopy, which I really enjoy. All right, let's go through a bunch of these here. Matthias, go Jets. Yes. Matthias, a free agent safety would be nice, sure. Marcus Williams, watch out for from the New Orleans Saints. Jesse Bates of the Cincinnati Bengals. They could go schematic. Jaquiski Tart of the San Francisco 49ers read that bad drop in the NFC Championship game. He is a free agent, so you could go scheme-based maybe. That Robert Saleh dives in those waters. We'll kind of see how that is doing. Jared Helmuth, how's the baby doing? Well, thankfully, I've got the best family in the world right now. My mother-in-law is here. She's been here it's going to be 2 weeks in total. She was here all of last week. She'll be here through this week. So she's been helping with the baby while I'm doing all these shows and articles and podcasts and stuff. So that's fun. I have my beautiful fiance as well. The baby is fine. She's healthy. We've been going to all the meetings and everything. It's been great. And I will say this, and I apologize to anyone that follows me on social media, which, by the way, let me get the banner up here and a couple of little promos for people who are watching. There's now a scrolling ticker. You can follow me on Twitter at BoyGreen25, wherever I am on all social media. And let me throw up the little graphic. Booyah, throw it up there. The Jet Zone graphic, which, again, Sports War Radio and all that. But anywho, the baby's been great. But I will say this, and I don't know if make fun of these people, but it was kind of a quiet thing. Like I'm scrolling on Facebook and then I see those people posting about their babies and their kids. I'm like, ugh, come on, people. Like, geez, hello, get a room. And then now that I have a baby, I am constantly going, wow, look at my baby. So, like, I've become that annoying dad. So I apologize to anyone that follows me on social media. I try to not have a lot of that on Twitter because it feels like a different space. But every once in a while, I'll drop a photo or two there. Most of the other stuff is on Instagram and Facebook. But the baby is doing well, Jared. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. All right, let's go to Braden here on YouTube. What will it take to get DK Metcalf in a trade? We've talked about this before. It was first brought up, I think U Stadium was the first to bring up potential DK Metcalf on the move. Like, don't be surprised if a trade happens. And obviously, part of the precipice of that is the potential shifting of the narrative. Seattle for the last decade has been a Super Bowl contender. Okay, they've been battling for championships, and Russell Wilson already has one ring on his finger. He could have, should have, would have had two back to back. And up until this past year, they had a winning season. They'd had at least a 9-7 record or better in every year that Russell Wilson was a quarterback. Now, with Wilson potentially on the move this offseason, the thought is, wow, they could blow up the whole thing. DK Metcalf is due for a deal soon. You know, maybe you can flip him and not have to pay him and all that. And again, it would be hilarious to trade that number 10 pick. I think that's, I don't know. It seems rich. Like, I love the player. I think the player is young. I think he's got great potential. But the fact that you're going to have to pay him a mega deal, that hurts the value that Seattle could get back because, like, not only do the Jets have to compensate the Seahawks, but they would also have to pay the player. So I feel like the 10th overall pick is too rich. But I love the player, but I think it would be hilarious if you use the number 10 pick to go get DK, because then basically you traded Jamal Adams for Elijah Vera Tucker and DK Metcalf, which, again, is hilarious. But what would it take? It's a hard, complicated question. First off, are the Seattle Seahawks going to blow this up? Are they going to be able to keep Russell Wilson? Are they trading him? If they keep him, DK Metcalf stays. But if they trade him, all bets are off. They could do anything they want, Braden. But what would it take? For me, again, I think the 10th overall pick is too rich because, again, the player, age, all that checks off all the boxes. Some people have criticized the invisibility that often happens with DK. If you look throughout his career, there's not that level of consistency from, like, he's always there. Like, I'm going to use Cooper Kupp. That's a terrible example, but Cooper Kupp is like every week he's getting like 5, 6, 7, 8 catches. Or Hunter Renfrow is another good example. He's not as dynamic, obviously, as DK, but every week he's just there, and you're like, wow. And Antonio Brown, prior to all the craziness, he had that long streak of like 50 or more receiving yards in like a million games in a row. Like, he had always been there. DK has been kind of up and down. Now, was that quarterback play? Was that offensive philosophy? Because they seemed to want to ground and pound. Then they wanted to let Russ cook. So there was an offensive identity crisis, it seems like, there were the Seahawks. But what I would probably do is the second-round picks, and we will talk about this all the way from now through the draft, but to me, those second-round picks are like first-round picks. Players are going to fall that we didn't expect, that were like slam-dunk first-round picks that somehow fall to the second round. It happens every year. And those Jets picks are going to be very, very valuable. They have 2 second-round picks, 35 overall and 38. Both of those are going to be super valuable. So I hesitate to even give those up, but again, you can't just say, oh, I'll give you a 7th round pick for DK because, you know, Seattle has to agree too. So I would probably consider maybe a conditional 2 that could be a 1. So that would mean you have to dive into the 2023 waters potentially. And hopefully you could kind of trade back from 10 maybe and then recoup picks that would make up that difference. But probably a conditional 2 and change, I would think. Maybe a conditional 2 and a 5, maybe. Because, again, you got to pay DK, and I think that's a big thing there. But a very interesting question. I love DK. I think he's great. So, yeah, there you go. Matthias loves DK. And, again, it's rumor season, which is my favorite season. Because, I mean, someone could be wrong if they completely make up a rumor. But, I mean, it's speculation. I'm going to be honest. For those who don't know, again, I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. That is a entity that pumps out articles, podcasts, and all kinds of things. And again, you can join the community Heavy on Jets on Facebook. We have over 16,000 Jet fans, and every day I read 3 articles at a minimum for that site. So I speculate a lot. Like, I'll look around the internet and someone will say, wow, man, maybe the Jets could be a fit here. And I'll be like, oh, interesting. So I bring up in an article what they say, and then I give my opinion in the second half of the story. And I really love those articles, the speculation, like, look at what the contract is, look at the market value. I just love talking about all that stuff. So long story short, it is rumor season. Let's keep going here with a couple of questions. Back to Matthias here. This free agency will dictate the draft. When we get a safety and tight end or wide receiver, it'll give us a lot of freedom. 100%. That is my mentality. If I was a GM, and again, I love Madden, and I'll get actually into my Madden story after I answer this question. A really cool bucket list moment just happened earlier today. But for me, when I run Madden, I love running the franchise mode Madden because you get to basically be a GM of the Jets or any team, and you get to sign free agents, trade, draft. And how would you build the team if you were responsible for such a thing? And my mentality in free agency is fill as many holes as possible to create ultimate flexibility in the draft. I think that is the most prime way to do it. I think that's the best way to do it, quite frankly. And then you have BPA or whatever you want. When you don't, let's say they don't address safety, tight end, or wide receiver, then you're forced in the draft to do something crazy. Like, oh boy, we need a tight end. We got to force this square peg in this round hole. And that's when you overdraft guys. That's when you reach and everything else. And to me, that gets funky. But there are so many. I love the tight end free agency market. I've said it a million times. Again, I love it no matter where you go. If you go to the top of the board, I really like Dalton Schultz. Mike Gesicki, I don't love as much. I think he's a great pass catcher, but the blocking is questionable, and I think you need an all-around kind of piece. Again, the Jets could just use weapons, so I would understand the Gesicki love. And then there's like just a bucket list of guys, and I've mentioned them before, like Evan Ingram's, O.J. Howard's, David Njoku's, whoever your guy is, and there's a million of them, Just a million. I was trying to think of the Seattle. Gerald Everett is the Seattle one. So there's like a bunch of tight ends that I would throw a dart at and then probably combine with the draft pick anyway. And then wide receivers, again, I love Allen Robinson. Now I've kind of given up on that dream. I've been pounding that table for years. And I'm like, whatever. Now he's probably going to be a free agent, and I've finally given up on it. But anywho, I think that's a great mentality to have. Real quick diatribe, then we'll dive back into the questions here on free agency, draft, and everything else. Earlier today, well, technically yesterday I recorded the video, but I play Madden, so the new Madden game is out. It's not really new. It's February, so it came out in August. But a new Madden feature on franchise mode is when you enter a new year, they do this Hall of Fame enshrinement thing for a player. It's a cool new feature about, players that could go in the Hall of Fame and all this. And Rich Eisen does all the voiceover work for the video. And long story short, Darrell Revis went into the Hall of Fame. Now, he's not really in the Hall of Fame. He's not eligible until next year at 2023. But in the Madden video game, I'm playing, obviously, ahead of time. So I'm playing seasons, and the clock is moving. Well, anywho, Rich Eisen did this whole piece. They had a video package, and they had the bust of Darrell Revis in the Hall of Fame. It's a video game, but I recorded the video and put it out on Twitter. And I said, wow, here's Rich Eisen, kind of doing this video for Darrell Revis. Going into the Hall of Fame, he's first eligible next year, and I tagged Revis in the thing, and Revis retweeted it. And I'm going to be honest. Obviously, as a reporter, as a verified blue check guy, like I've done a lot of cool things in my life. I also am a sports talk radio host. I've met all kinds of cool celebrities. I'm trying to name them off the top of my head now. Now I'm going to forget everybody. But guys from Chuck Liddell, MMA fighter, to Matt Eisman, to, I haven't met Adam Schefter, but that's the range. I've met NFL superstars, Fletcher Cox, random Jet players, random NFL players, baseball stars, Mike Trout, and or it's not Trout, it's the other guy. But anyway, the point is, it's I've gotten the pleasure to meet a lot of really cool people in my life and do a lot of cool things. But there are a few things that still get me to go, wow, that's so cool. And Darrell Revis giving me a reach. If you go to Darrell Revis's Twitter right now, the top tweet before we started recording this show was me, because he retweeted that video. That's so cool. I mean, that was I geeked out. I'm going to be honest. I'm a huge Revis fan. I got a Revis fat head over in the man cave. Come on, Revis is the GOAT, baby. He's right up there at prime time as the best cover corner and lockdown corner of all time. And he is eligible for the Hall of Fame next year. And boy, we probably won't get into it a lot on the show, but to me, Hall of Fame is such a unique thing. I love the Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Again, another bucket list thing I've not done yet. But to me, there is a difference with first ballot Hall of Famers and just Hall of Famers. Now, everyone gets a jacket. Everyone gets a bust. There is no real distinction for, there's not an asterisk by your name if you're first ballot or not, physically and literally. But to me, first ballot means something. It means a little extra when you're first ballot. And Darrell Revis, quite frankly, deserves to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And if you watched his career, if you watched him, I don't hear all these people on Twitter going, well, he didn't have a lot of interceptions. Yeah, he didn't get thrown at a lot because it was Darrell freaking Revis, man. Revis Island, for Pete's sake. So, anywho, the point is, really cool moment. Thank you, Darrell Revis, for the retweet. Again, I love Revis and have a million Revis jerseys in the closet. And maybe my first trip to the Hall of Fame will be next year when Revis is enshrined in Canton. I really hope so. I think that'd be really cool. So just quick diatribe there, by the way. Again, I don't want to give a million of these shout outs because I know that people who are listening on the audio side later is going to find this annoying. So I apologize. We're trying to find a perfect balance between doing these live videos and then the people who listen later on audio. But I will give another shout out. If you're just joining us here, please take a few moments to show your support and like wherever you're watching, specifically YouTube. If you can, go over there and give a thumbs up to the video and hit that subscribe button. It makes such a tremendous difference. And I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're at 830 and change. I'm trying to get to 1K. So help me get to 1K if you can. Share the video, spread the word for all New York Jets content all the time, a cool draft guest, other star guest, and then these live streams and everything else. Again, try to help Boy Green get to 1K. If you can, I'd really appreciate it. All right, let's dive back into the questions and comments here. All right, we've got John Hepburn. Hey, fellas, what's happening here? Oh, he's got a question here. Okay, let's dive in on this one. What's your thoughts on DJ Chark, free agent wideout? Big body, blazing fast, hurt last year, rolled up while blocking. I think we could get him at a good price. What are your thoughts? I'm all for value, and I think I talked about this on my radio show earlier today. I like getting value. I like going to the dollar store to get things that may be more expensive in other places, but it's a really good product, right? So I feel that way about DJ Chark. Again, just kind of, it's like the Mekhi Becton situation a different way. He got rolled up. Anyone could have been rolled up that way and get hurt. Same with DJ Chark. It was just an unfortunate situation. I think that happened on like a Thursday night football game or something earlier in the year, or maybe it was a 1 o'clock game. It was really early in the year, I remember. But either way, DJ Chark is a huge wide receiver, unlimited potential, but it's just been in a series of unfortunate events in the NFL. He would be a guy I'd like to throw a dart at, quite frankly. And it really depends. The Jets have a million options. They could trade for a receiver. They could sign a receiver. They could draft a receiver. I mean, they really have a million options, but DJ Chark is a guy I like a lot. I think he is one of those height, weight, speed guys that I think could be a great fit in this offense. I think that would be as well. And Matthias brought up Amari Cooper as well. Again, there's a lot of speculation that the Dallas Cowboys could choose to move on in some form or fashion, whether by cutting him straight out or trading him. I love Amari Cooper. I think he's the anti-diva receiver, despite some of the radio comments this year that he made. He's just a guy that shuts up and goes to work. He's not a rah-rah, me guy, and I love those receivers. Ocho Cinco's and T.O.'s are some of my favorite receivers all time, but in particular for this Jets offense, I think he could be a phenomenal fit. Could be phenomenal. Let's go to Jared Helmuth on YouTube. You think Jerry Jeudy becomes available with Denver paying Sutton and Patrick? Yeah, I talked about this last week, Jared, and I have not written my column for it yet for Heavy. That'll be coming up in the next couple of weeks here. I'll try to do it maybe the end of this week to get that column up. I've been thinking about it for a while. 100%. You have a new regime coming in with Nathaniel Hackett. I think there's a real possibility you get the whole Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams crew over, and then think about it. You got Devontae Adams, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and Aaron Rodgers. Like, where does Jerry Jeudy fit? I think he could shake free. New coaching staff coming in does not have the direct correlations to him. They're selling the team, which, a lot of people don't talk about in terms of free agents and stuff, and not that there's a direct correlation necessarily. But for me, I think, ownership changing, coaching staff changing, all that. And George Patton was not the general manager, I believe, when they drafted Jerry Jeudy. So I think that was John Elway. So with that being said, man, I would be all over Jerry Jeudy. He's a young player. He had some struggles with catching the football, which is kind of weird because he was such a really good player at Alabama. And the route running, obviously, is pretty incredible as well. So he's a very talented player that I like a lot. And I would love to see it. He would be near the top of my list, depending on the list and all the players that you're kind of thinking about and coming around on. He would definitely be one of those guys that I think could be pretty high on my wish list. So I would look for Jerry Jeudy there. Yes, I would be interested in that potential addition. Dark Soldier on YouTube, sup crew. What's up? What's happening, Spider-Man? Love it. And again, guys, wherever you're watching, drop in your questions or comments throughout the show. I got a couple of topics myself in between questions. I'll kind of sprinkle them in here on all kinds of things. But if you have things to ask or topics you'd like to have discussed, feel free. All right, let's go back to Matthias here. This draft has a lot of depth. It's not the greatest at the very top, but it's deep. That is good for a team with a lot of needs. I think there is some talent at the top. Like, to me, I love Kayvon Thibodeaux, who we'll get into in a few minutes. Kayvon I like a lot. Aiden Hutchinson, super talented. There is some talent at the top, but I agree with the depth thing, that there is depth at a variety of positions. Tight end is certainly one of them, where you could just get a lot later and you could be very picky. You could be very picky with what you do from that standpoint. But this draft, and I will mimic the words of Leger Douzable, who tweeted this out after the Jordan Reed mock draft. Another thing we'll get into here on the show. But he said that this draft class, basically, the one that Jordan Reed picked specifically, which we'll get to later, but it has the chance to be the best ever. But more specifically, this has the chance to be a franchise-altering draft. Now, the problem with the Jets is, first off, they haven't really had a lot of great drafts in general over the last decade plus. Like the last great one, you're thinking, the Brick Mangold double dip first round, the Revis David Harris draft, and you start thinking about some of those in 2006, 2007. Like, wow! Not only do they have good singular drafts, but they stack back-to-back classes together, and that's how good teams become great. Is you're building depth and you're building star power and youth upon youth upon youth, as opposed to hiring mercenaries in free agency and you build your entire team around that. It's just not very feasible because that's a lot of money and things of that nature. So the draft is key. And the problem with the Jets is, quite frankly, they haven't been able to put a single really good draft together, let alone multiple, which has eroded the depth of the team, and the star power up top has been questionable as well. So for me, this 2020 class is looking god awful. I mean, Jesus. We talked about Cameron Clark retiring last week, which is a super sad story. The Mekhi Becton drama is sad. The Denzel Mims drama is sad. They cut Jabari Zuniga, their third-round pick. Ashton Davis has been a disappointment. Yeah, James Morgan was cut, and LaMichael P. Ryan has been a bust, and Bryce Hall has been really good, and then you have Braden Mann, and that's it. I mean, that class has been horrible. But 2021 looks great. Now, you need to stack back-to-back classes together very nicely. With 2022, they have the opportunity to do so. That's going to be the difference of whether or not they take that next leap. Let's go back to YouTube. John Hepburn. Revis better going in as a Jet. He goes in as a Patriot. I'm done. John, a couple of things on that, by the way, because a lot of people brought this up when I brought back up that video. Players, despite contrary to popular belief, players do not go in as anything. They don't, like Megatron doesn't choose. He only played for the Lions, but the point is, like, he doesn't choose to go in as a Lion, or like Brett Favre, right? He played for the Packers, Vikings, and Jets. He didn't go in as a Packer or a Jet or a Viking. I mean, that's how we fans think about it. But just so you know, from the Hall of Fame perspective, they don't go in as a team. We just think about that as players, and, they do the one-day retirement and all that jazz. Like, and by the way, Revis did that. He did the one-day Jet retirement thing and did a whole spiel. But they don't go in as a certain thing. Now, I will say this on the Patriot thing, because I saw a lot of fans clap back at that and why they still feel some angst. Now, I get it. I never wanted to see Revis in a Patriot jersey. He ended up winning a Super Bowl with the New England Patriots, which is disgusting. But the fact of the matter is this. The Jets traded Revis to Tampa Bay, and they got a haul. They got the first-round pick that ended up being Sheldon Richardson and everything else. But the fact of the matter is the Jets traded Revis away. Now, Revis was having all the contract drama, which we remember, which is why they traded him. But after that, after 1 year of that, obviously the Buccaneers lost out on that trade. They cut him. And Revis is hanging out there. John Idzik, and I'll die on this hill, had a chance to be a superhero. One of his first moves when he was hired was trading away Revis to the Bucs, and he got a nice king's ransom of a first-round pick and change, and that ended up being Sheldon Richardson, who was the defensive rookie of the year. Worked out pretty well initially at first. And then a year later, if he signs Revis back, so not only did he trade him away, get assets, but then bring him back, he would have looked like the greatest hero in the history of Jetdom. But obviously he didn't, and then he signed with the Patriots. He won a Super Bowl. So, the Jets didn't offer Revis the return then. They offered it a few years later when he was a bit older and won the Super Bowl, was a free agent again. But again, Idzik didn't take that opportunity. They traded him away, and then they didn't choose to re-sign him. So, for the people, I'm not picking on you here, John. I think a lot of people brought it up, so I just want to retell the story for people who don't know, is that, for people that are mad that Revis ever went to the Patriots, you have no one to blame but yourselves. The Jets traded him away initially to the Bucs, and then they could have re-signed him instead of going to New England, but he showed no interest, or the Jets didn't. So he goes to New England, wins the Super Bowl. But in terms of it, of course he's going in as a Jet. The Tampa Bay experience was non-existent, the 2 stints with the Jets, and then he actually ended his career on the Chiefs, for people who remember that. So, again, of course he's going in as a Jet. Of course he deserves to be first ballot, and we will see what happens there from that perspective. But if he went in as a Patriot, I would throw up. But again, that's not a thing, because players don't go in as things. That's not how it works, for those who don't know. All right, let's go back to Jared Helmuth here on YouTube. I think the Jets should trade for Cooper, draft a wide receiver, not in round 1. Cooper shouldn't cost much because Jerry Jones is already unhappy, and there's talk of cutting him anyway because of how bad their cap situation is. Again, I would probably think with Cooper still, they're going to probably ask for a 2nd or 3rd round pick. There is talk they could cut him, but that's a lot of speculation at this point. Jerry Jones does seem to be upset with him and called him out a couple of times on the radio, but he's also called out other players, famous Cowboys throughout history. So I think he will cost a little bit of something. A 2nd or a 3rd round pick probably would be my guess. I'm fine if you don't want to draft a wide receiver in round 1. If you do, great. If you don't, that's okay too, because obviously there are other options beyond round 1. But Cooper is a guy that I think would be a great fit. I just want to say that. I think it would be a great fit. Back to YouTube here. Paul, I watched a lot of this from It's Snoopy. I watched a lot of Kayvon, and the narrative about him not having a high motor is false. The size criticism is crazy too, because he could always gain weight. Yeah, here's the thing. I love Kayvon Thibodeaux. And I will read the concerns that Todd McShay had, because that came out obviously recently, right? With Todd McShay criticizing him coming out of the Senior Bowl. He didn't participate in the Senior Bowl, by the way. But he did not participate in the Senior Bowl, by the way. But there were a lot of nuggets and things coming out after the fact about, certain guys. And unfortunately, and whatever way you want to slice that puppy, Kayvon Thibodeaux was the recipient of some draft buzz. And I want to read you the Todd McShay quotes for those who missed it on what he said about Kayvon Thibodeaux. Again, this came from Todd McShay and Jeremy Fowler. Here's from McShay. Quote, McShay said that he heard concerns from NFL people that Kayvon Thibodeaux doesn't play with the same fire as some of the other top prospects in this class. While his ceiling is considered extremely high, the floor is, quote, lower than you'd want for a top 5 pick. McShay added that after having a handful of conversations at the Senior Bowl, quote, it wouldn't shock him to see a talented pass rusher fall out of the top 5. I will say this. I don't think there's any chance that Kayvon Thibodeaux, outside of something we just don't know, like there's some criminal activity, there isn't. But if there was, that we are unaware of, maybe then he slips. But pass rushers, teams need pass rushers all the time. I mean, it seems crazy to me that he would fall outside the top 5. If Kayvon is there for the Jets at number 4 overall and they don't take him, I will go bananas. I will be flabbergasted, appalled, quite frankly, if he is not the pick at number 4 overall. I just can't see it. With how much Joe Douglas prides himself in the trenches to potentially hooking up Robert Saleh with a defensive stud. Again, I just don't see it. So the narrative about him not having a high motor to me is complete malarkey. The size criticism to me is malarkey. You just find a way to get your best players on the field, and Kayvon Thibodeaux is a freak. So, Snoopy, we are in complete agreement. Complete agreement. All right, going to Braden on YouTube. Do you think the Lions could pick a quarterback in the draft for the 2nd overall pick? Absolutely not, Braden. I do not think so in any light. While I will say this, so it'll give me another opportunity to talk about this, I do buy the stock rise of Malik Willis from Liberty coming out of the Senior Bowl. I do buy the stock rise from Kenny Pickett out of Pittsburgh coming out of the Senior Bowl. But I just don't think there would be enough magic. Maybe. I would love to be surprised. Carson Wentz did it. Remember, he was like a 2nd-round pick and then went to the Senior Bowl and all that jazz. They ended up being a top 2 pick of the draft behind Jared Goff. So it can happen. It's possible. And I would love for it to happen. But I think more of the quarterback run movement will happen closer to 10th overall than 2nd overall. But we will see. So right now I'm not buying it, but I would love to buy it if that makes any sense. All right, let's go to John Hepburn here. I don't like paying running backs, but there's a free agent, James Conner, age 25, thumper, good hands. You think he will want a ton of money? Probably, because here's how the James Conner thing works. And by the way, that is a free agent favorite of mine this offseason for the Jets. I think the Jets need to get Michael Carter a power back to go with him because Michael Carter is not proven to stay healthy. I like Michael Carter. I like the player. Loved him in the draft. Liked the fit on the Jets. But the thing that I don't like is the durability concerns. He got rattled a little bit this year, was not able to play a full season. And especially, that's not a great sign coming out of year number one. And then running backs get beat up pretty often. So I think they need to add a running back. In terms of who, I think James Conner is the perfect fit. He's a physical guy. He's a bigger guy. Could be the goal line back. He's super versatile. He catch the ball out of the backfield. But think about this. So he went to Pittsburgh, and remember he had cancer and overcame that. And Pittsburgh to the Steelers, Pittsburgh the college, and then ended up with Pittsburgh the Steelers. Seemed like a match made in heaven. Great relationship. Everything. The final year, things kind of sour. He ends up being a free agent. No one wants him, and Arizona gives him like a no-nothing deal. And obviously he explodes with all the touchdowns this year. So I think he's going to want to get paid. Like probably around like that 3-year deal for $25 million and change, something in that realm, I would imagine is what he's going to be looking for. And again, that may be a bit too pricey, maybe too priced out for the Jets, perhaps. But again, the fit just makes a lot of sense from player to team. I get the money. They got to figure all that out. They're those agents. I'm not the agent, but I love the player. Absolutely love the player. All right, back to YouTube here. Jared Helmuth, I may be in the minority, but I don't like a wide receiver in round one, at least not at 10. If they trade down, maybe. I think the wide receiver class is deep. There's no elite consensus number one wide receiver. I think this is first off, I don't think this is Jamar Chase in this draft to kind of echo your sentiment. I think this is a flavor draft where there is a lot of receivers that do different things. Like Traylon Burks is this Deebo Samuel type. You have Garrett Wilson. You have Drake London, who's this big lanky dude who's kind of like a poor man's Brandon Marshall a little bit. Like you have a lot of different receivers that do different things. You have Jameson Williams, obviously, and all these guys. And I don't think there's a consensus number one, but maybe it's like the class a couple years ago, and I don't know if it'll be this good. We will see, where you had CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs, and you were talking about all these different receivers that could do different things and different guys like that. And ultimately, Henry Ruggs went first because of the speed, and then you had CeeDee Lamb, who is one of my personal favorites. So maybe it's one of those kind of classes. But ultimately, we'll keep an eye out. I'm not opposed to waiting on receiver. I think there's great depth at wide receiver, but also I don't like the people that just completely crap on taking receivers in the first round. Like Jamar Chase was pretty good. Like some of these other receivers are pretty good, but Justin Jefferson and others. But again, it just kind of depends because you kind of get what you pay for. But Elijah Moore looked pretty good in the second round. So maybe that's where they could wait for the second round. That could make a lot of sense. Let's go to Matthias here. Do you think Pittsburgh might trade up to 10 for a quarterback? And do you think a quarterback might go earlier? There's a chance, obviously, at that back end of the top 10 where you got teams like Atlanta, Carolina, the Jets. Not the Jets would take one, but like that's the range where a team could trade up. Pittsburgh could. Now, Pittsburgh historically doesn't trade up a lot. They did it recently to Devin Bush, and they made a similar jump, like 20 to 10 or 20 to somewhere around that range. And then obviously the Bears did it last year, jumping up. So Pittsburgh might, because they were staring at quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl. But like I said, you never know completely. But I would imagine it's possible. Although I wrote that article, it was based on a lot of different things. Connor Rogers pitched for Badlands, a potential trade where the Steelers give up their first, second, and third round pick to move up to 10. And that's around the right value according to the NFL draft value chart. But Steeler fans roasted me, said, what a stupid trade. This would be dumb. And some Jet fans are like, well, this isn't enough. So, when you wrote a good article when everyone's on the opposite side of each other. Excellent work. But nonetheless, I do think it's possible and would make a lot of sense. I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, again, for everyone who's watching, make sure you hit the thumbs up on the video and hit the subscribe button. Also, drop your questions and comments on topics here in the channel. We'll be going here for a little bit longer, and then I'll answer some other topics, and then we'll get out of here. Trying to catch up on all these. Where are we? Okay, I think it's Braden here is the next question. Gun to your head and no trade down. Would you take a cornerback or a linebacker at 10th overall? Oh, my gosh. Oh, boy. Corner. I'd take corner. I'd take like a Sauce Gardner. And Stingley, again, I say it throughout this process. He's going to be a complicated eval throughout this whole thing, how he interviews and everything else. But we haven't seen the same player in years. So with injuries and everything else. But I would say corner. Although, the scheme and how they value it, I'll answer actually this question in a different way. But gun to my head, corner, either Sauce Gardner or Stingley, I could see that. I think both will be on the board. Linebacker so intriguing. I love Nakobe Dean, but I like some of the mid-round linebackers too, like Muma. I think he's pretty good too. I think there's other value you can find later. But corner, gun to my head. I love these questions. I'll go corner, Braden. Back to YouTube. Jared Helmuth, do you think the talent drop-off at tackle after Neil Iquanu is greater than the talent drop-off at edge after Thibodeaux Hutch? Would going O-line at 4 make more sense than Thibs, even if he's there? No. I think while I get the question you're trying to ask here, I think there are other, whether you like a Trevor Penning potentially, who was at the Senior Bowl, who you like a lot. I wouldn't like him at 10, maybe in that 15 range. But I just think pass rushers are just so important that you get the pass rusher, to me. And again, the power rankings would somewhat be, for me, Kayvon Thibodeaux is number 1 on my board. Aiden Hutchinson is a close 2. And then I start going the offensive lineman, Evan Neal and Iquanu. So that's my top 4 big board right now is Thibodeaux number 1, Aiden Hutchinson number 2, and then, Iquanu, Neal, which you could kind of mishmash. I'm number 1, like I said, Thibodeaux, and Hutchinson's a clear number 2, and then the tackles are kind of meh. It kind of depends what you want. Like Iquanu could probably be a better served starting his career at right guard than flexing out than Neal, I would say. But again, there's good players at both. I think you could, if you want to go edge later, right? There's Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State, who's really rising up boards. If you're a David Ojabo guy, he rising up boards. So it depends. Obviously, normally how that works is offensive linemen disappear, is what the people say. But I think you could do either combination. I don't mean to dance around the question, Jared, but for me, I would go, again, Thibodeaux right off the top if I had the choice. Let's go to Matthias here. What's your take on Linderbaum? He's supposed to be better than Creed Humphrey. If you draft him, McGovern moves to guard and your offensive line is set. Matthias, I pounded my table about this last year. About why I would do that, and I was a big guy for Creed Humphrey. I don't think the Jets do it. I hope so, but I was hoping for it last year, and it didn't happen. What would change from then to now? McGovern actually played solid last year, but Linderbaum is a good player. So if he slips, I've seen a couple mock drafts. I can't remember if it was Daniel Jeremiah or someone similar, but Linderbaum dropped to like the bottom of round 1, and then maybe then you could trade up Elijah Vera Tucker style and snag him. Now that, again, we're talking about the value. That's potential. But for me, Connor McGovern has played right guard before. I would move into right guard, hit 2 birds with 1 stone. But that is, we're on the same page. I'm not sure if me, you, and the Jets are on the same page. Let's go to YouTube. Braden, potential replacement for Barris in this draft is Kyle Phelps from UCLA. Have you seen him? Not much. So I'm aware of the Kyle Phelps on the Jets, the former Tennessee star. I've not seen much of Kyle Phelps from UCLA, so I'll have to do some more work on him. And by the way, speaking of Barrios, for those who want to hop over there, Braxton Barrios is live on the Bleacher Report app, so I'll be interested to see kind of what comes from that. I'm sure people will be asking about the contract situation. He's live on Bleacher Report right now answering questions. Not that I want to send you away from here, because we love having, of course, all of you. Keep it simple. I see Thibs is getting mocked around 6 or 7 now. What's the reason Thibodeaux is falling? Again, the criticisms from Todd McShay recently are a couple of things. First off, they don't think he has the same fire as other players. Again, this is not my take. This is what Todd McShay was reporting. He thinks or says that from sources telling him that teams don't believe he has the same fire. Teams, again, question the floor. They think the ceiling is high, but they think he has a high bust potential, basically. So those are the reasons. I'm not buying those reasons. I'm still taking Thibodeaux. Now, every year, and I think there are a couple reasons that things happen. I think often we get bored with prospects. Trevor Lawrence is a kind of a good example. Like when Trevor Lawrence, since the moment he was born, basically, he was the number 1 high school recruit, number 1 college guy, number 1 pick and all this. And sometimes it gets boring when you know of players so far in advance, so you criticize them extra. Like Thibodeaux was one of the best high school recruits of all time. Look at actually the stats. I think Rivals has him in the top 50 all-time recruits in history. So, again, keep an eye out on that. But to me, I think that sometimes happens when guys are just they're in the spotlight for too much. Again, I hope that people buy these garbage rumors. Again, I like Todd McShay, and I'm not questioning his sources, but I hope all that's true and he's falling. I don't care how he falls. Give me Thibodeaux, baby. I am all on Thibodeaux. So if people want to buy that garbage, great for me. Jared Helmuth, who from the Senior Bowl do you think ends up on the Jets roster? Great question. I think there could be some combination of guys, whether it's Cole Strange, Trevor Penning, Daniel Fafale, let's see, Trey McBride, of course, when you talk about the tight ends. Mafe is an interesting pass rusher I like. I think that's a bunch. There's a bunch there, but I really like it all. Yeah, Matthias, he's answering questions, so people go check that out on the Bleach Report app. I will share any valuable nuggets on heavy.com. And finally here with Braden, Thibodeaux falling rumor is good for us. You're hell right it is. I'm all about it. I am all about it. All right, we're going to do some rapid fire, just topics real quick here before we sign off. First off, I think there's a potential for the Jets' only quarterback under contract right now through 2022 is Zach Wilson. That will obviously change. Mike White is a restricted free agent. Joe Flacco, an unrestricted free agent. Saleh wants to keep Flacco and wants to keep White. We'll see what happens there. Keep it out for Nick Foles. He still has a year left on his contract, but new Bears regime, they could cut him, and the Jets could swap out Super Bowl MVP quarterbacks this offseason. Possible. So keep an eye out for that. I think Jordan Reed may have had one of the best mock drafts for the Jets I've seen this cycle. You had Ike Ekwonu out of NC State. So you had him number 4 overall, Garrett Wilson, Ohio State at 10th overall, Myjai Sanders, the Cincinnati pass rusher, and Trey McBride, Colorado State. Those were the first 4 picks for the New York Jets by Jordan Reed, ESPN NFL Draft Analyst. We'll try to have Jordan Reed on Mock Draft Monday in the future on the YouTube show. We've had him on before. Again, I'm buying the stock of the quarterbacks rising, Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett. I think they are rising up the board, which is good for the New York Jets. I asked this question on my Heavy NFL show. Again, I'm a part of the panel, like an Around the Horn panel answering NFL questions. And the question was raised, which position will the Jets ignore this offseason? Because it seems like you can't build Rome in a day, so some position will be ignored. Remember, last year it was tight end. This year, linebacker. I could definitely see the Jets ignoring linebacker. They either convince themselves they're good with C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams, and they just don't do it, even though I believe they should be adding another linebacker to the rotation. But that could be the position they ignore. Remember, last year, despite all of us yelling for a tight end, they did not address that position. Also, one more quick thing. Coming out of the Senior Bowl, and I know a lot of people do not like Rich Cimini, but I will say this, the Jets are quote-unquote high on Kyle Hamilton, safety out of Notre Dame. Now, take with that what you will. It is, again, smokescreen season, so it could just be a smokescreen, but I just report what I hear, and Rich Cimini says that, I will share it. I know people were lighting up my Twitter, but I had to mute that conversation. Things were getting too crazy. My phone was blowing up too much. A baby couldn't stay asleep. I said, got to mute this one. But again, the information is out there, people. So again, take that for what you will. That's going to wrap it up here for the Jet Zone. Again, I've loved doing these video streams the last couple of weeks, everybody. Thank you so much for participating with all the great questions and content. Again, we are here for the Jet Zone every Wednesday. Normally, it's only an audio-only podcast, historically over the last decade, but we've been doing video recently here on the channel, so make sure you support. Hit the like button on the Jet Zone Facebook page. Hit the follow button on the Jet Zone underscore zone. And also, like I said on YouTube, hit thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, take a few minutes to hop on over. We also have, guys, by the way, every Monday a Mock Draft Monday, baby, with draft guests and other great things coming up on the show. So make sure you guys check that out. I'm working on our guests this week. We got a couple of big fish that are going to be on, and you guys are going to be like, wowza. I pride myself on my guest list, so I think you guys are really going to enjoy some of the guests that are coming up here on the show. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. And again, stay tuned for that series. A new episode drops every Monday. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for all the love and support, and we will see you again probably on Monday for a Mock Draft Monday special, and next week right here for the Jet Zone special. Thanks, everybody. Peace out. Enjoy your week.